All right, welcome back to another episode, everybody. Today, I'm going to help you figure out how you can become less sensitive to rejection. Because if you have confidence issues, if you struggle with social anxiety, you probably are very sensitive to other people's rejections. So that's the topic of today. This is very important because I think this goes hand in hand with social anxiety, low confidence, low self-esteem. And when we're sensitive to rejection, it messes us up in a lot of different ways. First of all, when you're very sensitive to rejection, you will perceive rejection that isn't even there. You might know this, but you're going to think that people are sending you signals of rejection when they're not actually, because you don't feel good about yourself. So you're going to, and you're hyper aware, right? You're super aware of everything that's going on. So you're always on the lookout. You're looking for facial expressions and how people are talking. And then because of these negative beliefs, you make assumptions. You don't even realize it. You make assumptions about words that people say, the tones that they use, the body language, all this. So that's the first thing is a lot of times we feel rejected and we're not even actually being rejected. But then what happens is if we actually are rejected, then forget about it. We'll lock ourselves in a room for days, thinking, obsessing, hyper analyzing every little thing. Okay, so what we have to realize is that the sensitivity to this rejection often comes from this low self-esteem because we have very negative beliefs about ourselves. We don't feel very good about ourselves. And so when someone rejects us, it isn't just that this individual person is rejecting us. It is that this is more proof in our mind, more evidence that we are just a rejectable person, that we deserve to be thrown under a bridge somewhere. We don't deserve to live with the rest of society, right? So we start with this assumption when we get rejected that this rejection actually is proof of something deeper than it actually is. In reality, rejection is a universal experience, right? There is not a human being, I don't care how famous, popular, whatever they are, who has not experienced rejection. But when we don't feel good about ourselves, we make it all about us. And not in an arrogant way, that's the way our mind thinks. We're very, very concerned with how we are perceived and what our meaning, our stance in the world is. So the first thing we have to realize is that because of our history, and in previous podcasts, I've talked about that narrative. We create a negative narrative about ourselves based on maybe past trauma, the way we've been treated, bullying, difficulty making friends in the past. We take that into the present and we assume that because of all this perceived rejection in the past, that means will continue to be rejected and it means we deserve to be rejected. Now, the reason I say perceived rejection in the past is because, look, no doubt you may have experienced very severe rejection. I'm not denying that from you, but you also have to realize, as I've mentioned in other episodes, when we have this narrative about ourselves that we're bad and we're awful, we make assumptions about what people do and what people feel and think about us. And then we actually prevent ourselves from getting close to people. Because we're so sensitive to it, we don't want to feel it. So we'll actually often push ourselves away from other people, or we'll just avoid social interactions altogether so that we don't have to feel it, so we don't have to get rejected. But then we use that as proof that we're so rejectable. But in reality, we haven't really given ourselves a fair chance, have we? Maybe we were rejected by our family, unfortunately, which is not our own doing. That's not our fault. That's our family being a shitty family. Or maybe we were rejected as a young child or middle school. In that case, that's still very painful. But again, we're being rejected by teenagers, by children, by people at that point in their life who are just as insecure as we are, and they're rejecting us for all sorts of reasons that we don't really understand. We think it's because we're so awful, but really it's because they're kind of going through a lot of weird stuff too. So we create this narrative that we're so rejectable, and then every time we get rejected, we tell ourselves this story again. Okay, so what do you do? How do you get out of this cycle? What we have to realize is that when we feel an emotion, any emotion, we have beliefs and feelings and thoughts about that emotion. I've used this term in the past. Metacognitions is also, you can use the word meta emotions, which is basically just beliefs about beliefs or feelings about feeling. So what does this look like? Let's use this in the example of rejection. Let's say I get rejected by someone. I go to talk to someone. It's not in my head. It doesn't go well. They're not interested. They walk away from me. The initial feeling is a stinging feeling, a pain of rejection, right? Everybody gets it different. Some people get it in their stomach. Some people get it in their throat. Everybody's feeling's a little different, but we get the feeling of rejection, and it stings and it hurts. But then what our mind does is it goes, hey, wait, we have all these ideas about rejection and what that feeling means. So we might think to ourselves, why do I feel this so strongly? Ooh, that's not good. Does that mean I'm weak? Do other people feel it this strongly? What's wrong with me? I must be pretty pathetic if I'm feeling this intensely. Or we might think, oh, here we go, got rejected again. Once again, proof that I am rejectable. I'm just this awful human being. I'm such a loser. Nobody likes me. So here's what happens. We get a feeling. It's just a feeling. Then we layer on top all these other beliefs about ourselves based on this feeling. And then all these other emotions start to come up. We start feeling weak. We start feeling guilty. We start feeling shameful. And it's just this cascade of emotion that we can't escape. So what we have to do is we have to focus on just the feeling of rejection. Let's take one feeling at a time, because otherwise this is going to spiral out of control. And this is why we end up going in our room and ruminating for days about not only this rejection, but past rejection and all these terrible negative emotions and feelings that we can't get out of our head. Let's simplify it. It's just rejection. It stings. It hurts. But maybe it doesn't have to mean so much, because don't we all get rejected? Now, I know what you're thinking, but I get rejected a lot more. I don't know. Maybe you do. I'm not even going to argue with you. I'm not even going to say that's your own bias, whatever. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. I don't know. The point is, well, what are we going to do from there? We're going to hold on to this belief that because I get rejected at a 40% rate and the average person gets rejected at a 20% rate, or maybe those numbers might be low, right? 80 and 60, I don't know, whatever numbers you want to use. That means I'm worse, right? But this is all theoretical. You never know how other people are experiencing life. You don't really know if you're being rejected more than other people. It's just a painful feeling. And again, it is in alignment with this negative narrative that you've told yourself. So what if we said to ourselves, whenever I feel rejected, I don't just feel rejected. I feel weak. I feel small. I feel guilty. I start thinking about what this means about me. I start thinking about all my flaws and all these problems, and then it snowballs and it goes out of control. What if we just focused on the feeling of rejection? What if we took a mindful approach to our emotions? What does mindfulness mean? It really just means being aware, being attentive to one thing at a time, to what is right in front of us in a non-judgmental way. It means I am going to experience life. I'm going to experience what is in front of me without making any sort of judgment about it. And what's interesting is we take a very mindful approach about physical pain all the time. If I'm walking around and I trip and land on my knee, I feel the pain of that on my knee, but then I don't go, oh man, why does it hurt so bad for me but not for others? Am I weak? Does that knee pain, does that mean I'm weak? Look, maybe you do. I don't know. Some people might. I can't say nobody does, but it's less likely that we make physical pain about us. Usually we just understand it's pain. Rejection's the same thing. In fact, the pain center in your brain for physical pain is the exact same brain center for emotional pain. So that's where you're feeling it. You're feeling the pain. What if we just experienced the pain of rejection? And every time your mind starts to wander and you start to notice that your brain is going, but see, that's because you're a loser. And that means that, nobody's going to like you and nobody is going to ever want to be your friend. And the very fact that you're so sensitive, you're so weak, how pathetic could you be? How could you be so sensitive? You shouldn't care. And this is why I don't like that you shouldn't care what other people think thing, because you should care. Everybody feels pain when they get rejected. That's normal. What's problematic is when we become obsessive about it. Feel the pain. It sucks when someone rejects you. It really stings. It is not a good feeling. But what if we just let that be without making it about us? What if we said, man, this pain really sucks, and describe it to yourself. I feel this like knot in my chest, in my throat, in my stomach. Physically describe it. Don't get too caught up in the thoughts and the emotions and all that. Just physically describe it and allow yourself to have the emotion. That will actually allow the emotion to pass. Otherwise, we try to control it, and we don't want to feel this because we don't like it, or we don't feel like we should feel this way because, again, we have all these meta beliefs, metacognition. So we want to shut it down. Let's shut down that negative emotion. I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't be so weak. I shouldn't be so. It's just a feeling. Let yourself experiencing it. Now, look, for some of you, that feeling might be more intense for others. That might be true. Sometimes emotional experiences are more intense. But a lot of times those amplify over time because we're so used to trying to just either get rid of it or we feed into it with all this other negative garbage. Okay? Let's just be with it. And let's take a non-judgmental approach towards that pain so that the next time you get rejected and you go out and you talk to someone, you feel that sting and you don't go, that's because I'm a loser and that's because I'm always rejected. You go, that's rejection. That's what rejection feels like. Let me experience this for the first time. And once you get in the habit of doing this, you will reduce that rumination. You'll stop thinking about the past and all the mistakes you made, and that negative narrative you've built will start to fall apart because you're not continuing to prop it up. Every time you go back and replay it, you strengthen it, right? Every time you go back, and I made a video on memory, maybe on my TikTok. I'm not sure if I made an episode on it, but the problem with memory is that it isn't actually very accurate. Memory is always just a regurgitation of a past memory. So when we already have a negative view of ourselves, we remember things in a negative way, and that reconfirms these negative beliefs. So if we stop building up these negative ideas and beliefs about ourselves, they'll start to lose their grip and their strength. They'll just start to crumble apart because, well, we stopped thinking about it. We stopped putting it together. We stopped making it true. Now, this might be hard for you to grasp because a lot of you might be thinking, no, but I really am a loser. I really am a failure. I really am awkward. All I have to say to that, if that's what you believe, I can't prevent you from believing that. My next question would be, well, how is that helping you? And you might say, well, it's not a matter of help. It's a matter of truth. For me personally, I've come to realize that what is helpful in getting us to where we need to be is much more useful than what is true. And again, oftentimes what we think is true is simply just a byproduct of our own negative bias that we are not even aware of. That's why I talk about negative bias so much. We have these ideas in our head. This happens all the time at work, right? It's like, how many times where your friends say, or maybe you've even said to yourself, I'm so worried about work, I'm gonna get fired, everybody hates me there. And then you go and you get your evaluation and everything's not only fine, but glowing. And then what happens is, because of all this negativity, you don't believe it. Now you think they're lying to you, or they're just saying that to be nice, right? So we can't take a compliment because every negative thing, we already believe it. So anything to the contrary, we don't believe. And then anything to the negative, we do believe. So what are we to do? What are we to do? How are you ever going to convince yourself that you shouldn't call yourself a loser? At some point, you got to just say, you know what? It's not helping me, is it? Let's try this other way. Give this a chance the next time. Next time you notice you're starting to spiral, notice your thoughts and realize, hey, I'm doing that thing again. I'm attaching all this meaning to what is just an emotion. Let's see what happens when I just experience the emotion instead of attaching all this judgment and meaning to things that only makes it worse in the long run. Thanks again for tuning in. Let me know if you have any other questions or topics you'd like me to cover, and I'll see you soon.